Hey guys. Tonight we're slipping into the straw sandals of a samurai except instead of clashing swords and leaping through smoky battlefields, you're doing something even more dangerous. Nothing at all. You're in that forgotten in-between time, tucked away in a quiet village with no war to fight, no armor to wear, and way too many chores. Picture it dawns just peeking over the thatched rooftops. The roosters are crowing with entirely too much confidence, and the rice steamer is already hissing like it's got something to prove. You probably won't survive this. Not because of combat, but because your master might assign you to clean the pig pens again. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here.
And hey,
post your location and local time down in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir from your futon, which is a generous word for what's basically a slightly squishier version of the floor. The room is simple, but not unpleasant. Sliding paper doors let in the smell of cedar wood and that thick, grassy scent of early morning dew. You stretch, joints creaking like a half-used bow, and squint toward the window. There's a rooster out there on the fence post, looking like he just invented sunrise. You pad across the floor on bare feet, careful not to wake the others. A few fellow retainers are still passed out, snoring like it's an art form. Outside, a low mist clings to the ground, curling around the sandals left by the doorway like some sleepy little ghost. It's not spooky, it's just very early. Breakfast isn't a grand affair. You help set it up because even samurai have to take turns, and soon you're sitting cross-legged beside a steaming bowl of rice, pickled radish, and miso soup that somehow smells like every version of morning ever invented. Your stomach grumbles, not out of hunger necessarily, but out of routine. It's what's expected of it at this hour. You're joined by old Yoshihide, who has one functioning eye and 3 functioning stories about that one time he saw a dragon cloud during a battle at sea. He never shuts up, and you love him for it. He slides into place with a grunt and starts eating without saying a word. That's how you know it's a good day. The rice is hot. The miso's just salty enough to make you wish you'd remembered to fetch more water from the well last night. And the pickled radish, that's probably been buried in a pot for the last 3 months. It tastes like sour history, but in a good way. Birdsong slowly joins the morning soundtrack, along with distant hammering from the blacksmith's shed. The whole village has started to stir, in that steady way that implies there's work ahead. Not glory, not poetry, just work. You fold up your bowl's cloth covering, wipe your hands on your hakama, and slide open the shoshi door. The air is crisp and smells like burnt cedar. Somewhere, someone's trying to start a fire with damp wood again. You step out, and your sandals hit the dirt with that soft crunch that means it hasn't rained in a while. The first real task of the day before even practices checking the sword stand. Your katana rests there, carefully oiled, though let's be honest, you may have forgotten to oil it last week. You inspect it anyway, gently sliding it halfway out of its scabbard, like a sleepy ghost peeking out to see if the world's worth waking up for. The blade catches the light. It looks dangerous in that beautiful, quiet way, like a cat that's too calm. Historians still argue whether samurai really treated their swords as soul extensions, or if that was romanticism layered on later. You've got your own opinion. The sword's mostly a ticket to keep getting free sake and decent lodging. Still, you bow your head slightly before returning it to the stand, just in case. You walk past the water barrel, dip your hands in the cold, and splash your face. You make the same involuntary gasp every morning. It never gets less icy. Your reflection ripples, barely recognizable through the movement. Maybe you're not the same samurai you were yesterday. Maybe you're hungrier. You look across the courtyard, where the rooster is now strutting like a general. You briefly consider challenging it to a duel. Then again, it's undefeated and has nothing to lose. You move on. At this hour, the manners still quiet. The head retainer hasn't called the morning meeting yet, which means you have a little pocket of unsupervised time. Dangerous stuff. You could write a letter. You could fix the tear in your sleeve. You could, perhaps, sit under the camphor tree and think about absolutely nothing for 10 whole minutes. You opt for thinking. You always do. The camphor tree's bark smells strange, sharp, and sweet. You sit cross-legged, sword within arm's reach, and lean your back against its ancient trunk. The world hums slowly around Euphles, buzzing villagers murmuring. Wind pushing gently through the rice paddies in waves that look like the earth is breathing. A butterfly lands on your knee. You stare at it. It stares back. You try not to sneeze. Your eyes flutter closed. Not from sleep, but from the sheer peacefulness of having nothing that urgently needs stabbing. You wonder if peace like this is rare. You wonder if it's wasted on people who are only trained to fight. Just then, a shout rings out. Someone's burned the rice pot. Again you sigh. The butterfly flaps away in protest. You stand up slowly, brushing the dust from your robes. The day has officially begun. You make your way toward the bathhouse with the slow inevitability of someone who knows that cleanliness is both expected and deeply inconvenient. The morning suns started climbing now, sending soft shafts of light across the worn wooden walkway. Your sandals knock lightly against the planks, a rhythm your body has memorized from years of repetition. Step, creak, step, creak. Mindlessly meditative, like the rest of your life these days, you pass the storehouse, where 2 teenage retainers are arguing about who forgot to salt the fish. You make eye contact, just long enough to convey a world-weary, "Don't drag me" into this, and keep walking. Their bickering fades behind you like gossip on the wind. The bathhouse is a squat little building behind the main compound, walled off for privacy but far from silent. Inside, a trio of older samurai are already soaking, the steam curling around them like lazy clouds. You nod politely. One of them waves you over with a hand that looks like it's wrestled time itself. You remove your robes with the same speed and grace you'd unsheath a blade, which is to say slowly, carefully, and trying not to trip. The wooden stool beneath you creaks as you sit and ladle warm water over your shoulders, a sharp contrast from the cold splash earlier. The sensation crawls down your spine and sighs into your muscles. Soap optional, sword oil mandatory. That's the unspoken bathhouse code. You reach into your satchel and pull out a small cloth bundle containing your cleaning kit, not for your body, mind you, but for your katana. Because even here, naked and half-boiled, your real job is to make sure your weapon doesn't get rusty. You glance sideways. One samurai is using a pumice stone on his calloused feet. Another is humming something suspiciously like a drinking song. And the third is gently brushing his wakizashi with more tenderness than he's ever shown to a person. Probably historians still argue whether samurai were as obsessive about blade maintenance as legends suggest, or if the polish trope is just another myth sharpened over centuries. You know the truth. It's a lot easier to polish steel than feelings. While scrubbing your own weapon clean with practiced strokes, you overhear a debate behind you about the best oil to use: clove, camellia. The third guy swears by bear fat, which immediately earns a disgusted silence. You decide to keep using the camellia oil your grandfather always used. He lived to be 90, or 91, or possibly 70, depending on who's telling the story. You test the edge of your blade with a breath. It doesn't cut it slices it into thoughts. You sheath it again, and sigh. Your back still hurts from yesterday's training, and the wooden stool doesn't help. The bath itself is next. You ease into the large communal tub with a low grunt. The water hugs you, hot and slightly sulfuric, as if nature itself brewed it. To melt away fatigue, you lean your head back and close your eyes, letting the steam infiltrate your brain. Thoughts swirl lazily, bubbling to the surface. Do you have time to sharpen your other blade? Should you mend your sock or just wear it? Inside out again. Did you leave your rice ration unattended? Someone belches. Another guy dunks himself under. You float for a moment, suspended between one breath and the next. A quirky little detail floats through your mind. One of the clan scribes recently swore that steam bathing improved sword balance, not because it strengthened the arms or relaxed the shoulders, but because it cleared negative ancestral energy. He also believes the moon is hollow, but you'll take the win if it means longer soaks. You emerge from the water glowing like a boiled turnip. Your skin feels soft, your head feels light, and your responsibilities feel very far away. You towel off again. More sword cleaning cloth than actual towel land. Redone your underrobes outside. A breeze catches you right in the wet hair. You shiver. That bath warmth lasted a full 12 seconds. You walk back through the compound, this time with your sword gently tucked under one arm. A junior retainer jogs past you, breathless and red-cheeked, probably late for training. You nod politely and immediately forget his name. Or maybe you never knew it. You've stopped keeping track of the under-15 crowd. As you near the weapons rack, the clan steward bows in your direction. You return it, formal and shallow, just enough to acknowledge his existence without inviting conversation. There's a fine art to that at your quarters. You place your blade back on its stand and quickly check your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. Still alive, still vaguely dignified. You smooth your sleeves and try not to think about how much you resemble a very tired lantern post. Then, you catch sight of your left toe poking through a tear in your sock. You sigh again, you pull it off, flip it around so the hole is on top, and hope no one notices. Time to face the rest of the morning. The training field calls, but for now, you've survived another peaceful bathhouse session without slipping, slicing anything, or getting pulled into a lengthy bear fat discussion. Progress. You reach the training field, just as the sun finally clears the tiled roof of the outer wall, spilling a curtain of gold onto the dusty earth. It would be beautiful if it weren't about to blind you while someone yells at you to do push-ups with a wooden sword balanced on your back. You trudge across the open yard, where the morning drills have already begun. Dust kicks up under your sandals and clings to your robes in a light film that no one ever really bothers brushing off. Around you, a dozen other samurai in training are lined up in uneven rows, each gripping a bakina wooden practice sword that looks unassuming and feels like it was carved from the bones of an angry tree. Your instructor is already there, of course. Master Kenjiro, barefoot, stone-faced. He's easily 70 but moves like a hawk on espresso. He once corrected your foot placement mid-swing by smacking your ankle with a rice paddle. You're not sure where he even got the paddle. You never saw it again. Late, he mutters without looking directly at you. Awake. You respond, which isn't technically wrong. You bow. He grunts. You take your place. Today's lesson is, in theory, about precision. In practice, it's about hitting a bundled straw post-makoaro with the bakken over and over again, until your shoulders beg for mercy and your calluses start growing their own calluses. The first hour is slow. Controlled cuts. Right stance. Breath synced to each swing. Historians still argue whether samurai practiced kata this obsessively outside of wartime. Some claim these rigid routines were later dramatized, while others insist even 14th century warriors were sticklers for posture and breathing. All you know is your legs hurt. And no one's even tried to kill you today. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The air fills with the rhythmic crack of wood meeting straw, interrupted only by Master Kenjiro's occasional growl. Lower breathe. No, not like that. You sound like a wheezing goat. You try to focus. Let the motion take over. Raise, swing, breathe. The bakken vibrates with each impact, sending little shockwaves up your arms. You wonder how long it would take to cut through an actual tree. You also wonder how long until you get your breakfast again. Thwack. Thwack. By the second hour, you're drenched. The sun is a bully. Your robe sticks to you like steamed rice to lacquerware. A dragonfly buzzes past your ear. Envy it deeply. Then comes sparring. Everyone dreads sparring. Not because of injury, although, let's be honest, that happens. But because it's the one time you have to try in front of other people. Your opponent today is Tadashi, who's slightly shorter than you and approximately twice as fast. You've fought him before. He once knocked your bakken from your hand so quickly that you thought you'd been hit by a spirit. Today, you try to predict his moves. You fail. Naturally. You bow. He bows. You raise your swords. He immediately spins, ducks, and taps your knee. Before you finish your first breath, it's fine. Humiliation builds character. Probably, Master Kenjiro claps once, sharply, again. And so you do. Tap, duck, counter miss, block, stumble. Tap. By the fifth match, you manage to land a clean hit not on Tadashi, but on his bakken. It's progress. He grins at you like you've finally joined the human race. You collapse onto the dirt when you're finally dismissed, limbs heavy, thoughts fuzzy. Tadashi flops beside you, offers you a plum. You take it. It's sour enough to make you forget the ache in your arms, at least for a second. Do you ever wonder, he pants, if we're actually going to use all this, like ... in a battle, or just ... ever? Outside this courtyard, you shrug. Maybe it's not about using it. He nods. Maybe it's just about looking cool. You both laugh. It's tired, genuine, a little hoarse. A young retainer nearby attempts a flashy spin and immediately drops his bakken. It smacks his foot, and he yelps. Tadashi and you both try not to chuckle too loudly as you head toward the well to splash. Your face again. You recall a curious tidbit from a traveling monk who visited the compound last spring. He claimed that some samurai used to meditate before practice by holding their breath until they passed out, claiming it helped them see beyond the body. Kenjiro called that nonsense from people with too much free time. You tried it once. You woke up with a nosebleed and no new insights. At the edge of the field, a breeze finally stirs, rustling the banner that hangs from the training hall. It bears your clan's crest, 3-leafed wheels overlapping, meant to symbolize endurance, balance, and probably something you've forgotten since last winter. You stretch your arms overhead, feel everything crack in protest, and take a slow breath. Your bakken hangs loosely in your grip. You half considered leaving it behind and pretending you forgot. But Kenjiro has a sixth sense for that sort of thing. And you're not in the mood for a surprise lecture on respecting the tools of war. You walk back across the field, tired but lighter somehow. You survived the morning without serious bruises, and Tadashi didn't make you eat dirt. A win by any standard. You place the bakken back on the rack with a small, satisfying clunk. Another training session done. Only several thousand more to go. The midday sun leans lazily across the compound as you retreat toward the quiet shade of your quarters. Training is over for no end. Your shoulders are sending little signals to your brain that say things like, "Why are we still doing this? And is this revenge for something we did in a past life?" You don't answer. You're too busy staring at the ink-stained calligraphy kit you've left out on your desk, like a guilty conscience. Letter writing, that noble tradition no one warned you would be harder than combat. You slide open the rice paper window to let in some breeze. It doesn't help. The summer air is already sticking to the walls like old sake. You kneel at your low desk, brush in hand, and unroll the sheet of washi paper. It's crisp and blank, and just waiting to expose your limited kanji repertoire. You dip the brush in the inkstone, which you remembered to grind this morning progress, and hover above the page. Who are you writing to today? Your cousin in Edo. A polite thank you to the armorer. That one girl from last spring who offered you persimmons and kind eyes. You decide on the girl. Not because you're brave, but because you've already written to your cousin 3 times this year and he never writes back. Probably busy being a bureaucrat. Or pretending to be. Your first character is supposed to say greetings, but looks suspiciously like goat. You curse softly under your breath and try again. The ink bleeds slightly into the paper, making the whole thing feel like it's melting. Or maybe that's just your confidence. Still, you keep going. One careful stroke after another. Your calligraphy has all the grace of a drunk crane, but you tell yourself that sincerity will make up for aesthetics. You even remember a haiku format, an attempt to insert one. The spring wind once blew. Your sleeve brushed my memory. Now ink runs downhill. You pause. That last line might be too on the nose, or the paper's just tilted. Either way, it stays. Historians still argue whether samurai actually wrote their own letters or dictated them to scribes. Some insist even low-ranking warriors were literate poets. Others say most messages were delivered by memory or messenger alone. You, for one, know that if you had a scribe, they'd be getting a very stern lecture about penmanship right now. You seal the letter with a little wax disc from your travel kit and press the carved stamp your family's crest into it, like you're doing something important. And honestly, it feels that way. In a world where everything's about blades and posture, writing a letter feels almost radical. Then, of course, you realize you forgot to include your name. You groan, slice the wax, and reopen the scroll with the delicate rage of someone who knows they deserve this. It takes 2 more tries before you get it right. Finally, satisfied or, at least tired enough to stop caring, you set the letter aside to dry in the sun. You watch the ink shimmer slightly, like a secret slowly drying into memory. Beside your desk sits a stack of scrolls you've been pretending don't exist. One of them is from the clan scribe, and it's a notice about proper address formatting. You used to read these thoroughly. Now you skim for keywords like mandatory, deadline, or dual. Nothing life-threatening in this one. You stuff it back under the stack. You stand and stretch, joints cracking like twigs in a forest. Your spine tries to renegotiate its contract with gravity. You ignore it. There's still time before lunch, and your mind is wandering dangerously into should I be productive territory. You glance at the box of wax seals, then at the old family sword stand you've been meaning to dust. Both seem like tasks that would make you feel useful without actually requiring much energy. You choose neither, and instead plop down near the door with a slice of dried sweet potato. You chew slowly, watching the courtyard beyond your doorway. The wind has picked up just enough to sway the paper lanterns that hang under the eaves. Dog trots past with a rice ball in its mouth. No one gives chase. The rice ball is his now. You think, briefly, about writing another letter maybe to your brother, the one who ran off to be a monk. He used to say that sitting in silence all day gave him clarity. You wonder if he ever had to clarify the difference between eternal harmony and eternal boredom. Maybe you'll write to him later. Or maybe you'll just keep meaning to. A small scroll rests beside your desk, half unfurled. You didn't write it, it's a poem copied down by one of your peers, who fancies himself the next bushido. You read it aloud under your breath, just to hear how the syllables roll. Ink on my fingers. The sword and the brush both stain. Only one draws blood. You smile. The poem's better than your haiku, but also deeply dramatic. That tracks. The guy owns for fans and twirls them during meals. You feel a light breeze brush your sleeve. The ink is dry. The letter sits sealed again and folded neatly. Whether it ever reaches her is another matter. Whether she remembers you is a bigger one. But for now, it's something, a little gesture that says, hey, I'm still a person, not just a blade with legs. You tuck the letter into your sleeve for later delivery and lean your head against the doorframe. There's a certain calm in this pause. No yelling, no sparring. Just ink-stained fingers and the possibility of being understood, even if your handwriting looks like a drunk crab trying to dance. You know what the real battlefield is. The tea room, not the formal one with silk mats and painted scrolls. No. You're headed to the side room where mid-level retainers try their best to recreate the refined elegance of a Kyoto tea master using chipped bowls and uneven tatami. Still, there's honor in trying. And besides, you once heard someone say tea ceremonies were a test of discipline, patience, and whether you can sit in seiza for more than 6 minutes without losing all feeling in your legs. As you kneel, your knees instantly regret every choice you've made this morning. The tea host today is Nobaru, a lanky samurai with too many opinions about water temperature. His tea whisk is a family heirloom, or so he claims. It looks like a very disciplined bundle of straw. You and 3 others form the audience, though no one's really watching. Everyone's pretending to admire the placement of the seasonal flower, a somewhat droopy chrysanthemum, but mostly, you're calculating how long it'll be before lunch. Noboru bows deeply, hands shaking slightly as he lifts the ladle. He begins the ceremonial motions: water pour, whisking, silent judging glances, all carried out with such solemnity. You almost forget he's the same guy who fell into the koi pond last week, trying to retrieve a sandal. You bow back with the seriousness expected of a trained warrior who's about to drink a teaspoon of liquid that took 25 minutes to prepare. The tea is okay. Grassy, bitter, slightly too hot. You sip it like it's sacred nectar. Everyone nods. Someone says, a fine bitterness, which is apparently a compliment. You manage not to cough. Historians still argue whether the average samurai actually performed formal tea ceremonies, or if that was more of a courtier's affectation picked up later by warriors trying to seem cultured. You're living proof that even muddy-footed warriors can be taught to bow correctly, though your left ankle is loudly protesting the entire ritual. You pass the bowl to the next samurai with both hands. It's oddly heavy, like it's storing the tension of everyone who's ever had to fake enjoyment of overly bitter matcha. The host performs a soft, practiced bow once more, signaling the ceremony's conclusion. You all bow in response, a little stiffly, and rise if that's what you want to call what your knees are doing. Someone tries to stand too quickly and almost topples into the incense holder. You all pretend not to notice. You step outside into the afternoon light, blinking. The whole experience only lasted half an hour. But time inside the tea room feels ... slower, like it got filtered through silence and powdered leaves. You rub your legs and head toward the well again. Cold water, even just a splash, resets everything. You cup your hands and let it pour through your fingers. Clean, cool, and just enough to make you forget how warm your tea bowl kneecaps still are. As you sit near the veranda, one of the younger pages darts up to you with a message scroll. You unfold it. It's not a mission, not a sparring match, just a request. Lord Hirotaka wants to observe tomorrow's ceremony and suggests greater precision in the flower arrangement. You glance at today's slightly wilted chrysanthemum. Message received. The scroll also includes a polite reminder that your presence is requested at the poetry exchange next week. You sigh. Another chance to make a fool of yourself with calligraphy and metaphors about frogs. Still, better than field duty. You reach into your sleeve and pull out the letter from earlier, the one for the girl who gave you persimmons. Find the stable boy and ask him to pass it along to the next courier heading toward the village. He nods eagerly, tucks it into his pouch, and bounds away before you can second-guess it. Now it's out in the world. The words, the awkward haiku, the ink blot that looks unfortunately like a squashed beetle. Too late to take it back. Probably for the best. Back in the shade, you find yourself reflecting on the tea ceremony again. There's something strangely satisfying about the whole ordeal. The control, the sequence, the idea that something so small could be done just right. Even if the tea itself tastes like boiled lawn clippings, you remember an old story told to you by your uncle. One samurai, during the Warring States period, performed a tea ceremony for the enemy general the night before a battle. The general was so impressed by the warrior's calm that he postponed the battle and eventually never attacked. You're not sure if the tale's true. Historians are still debating the details, arguing whether the general was truly moved, or just too embarrassed to fight someone who wore socks that clean. Still, the moral lingers. Precision matters. Presence matters. Even when you're just sipping from a chipped bowl in a dusty side room, a dragonfly buzzes near your ear again. You swat gently. Miss it lands on the edge of your sleeve like it owns the place. You sigh and close your eyes, letting the rhythm of the compound drift back in. The clack of sandals, the hiss of the cook's fire, the distant bark of the rice ball thief dog, now likely defending its prize. You let your thoughts wander. Tomorrow, you'll be back on the training field. Tomorrow, you might get paired with Tadashi again. Or maybe get assigned gate duty, which mostly involves standing very still and trying not to eat all your rations by hour 2. But for now, your belly's quiet. Your hands are ink-stained but steady. And the tea, for better or worse, has settled. You lie back for just a moment, resting your head against the edge of the veranda. The sun slips behind a cloud. The air cools. Just for now, everything is still. You hear the cook's triangle before you smell the food, but only just. It's a soft clink-clink from the open-air kitchen, followed by the unmistakable aroma of hot rice, fermented miso, and something unmistakably pickled. You sit up from your resting spot by the veranda like a cat who's just heard a can being opened. It's lunchtime. The dining area isn't exactly a grand hall, more like a collection of low wooden tables under a slanted roof with faded banners. Swaying lazily above, you and a few dozen others shuffle in, still dusted from training. Some of you still clutching Bakken-like children with stuffed toys. You sit cross-legged across from Tadashi, who already has a bowl and is inspecting it like a jeweler examining flawed gemstones. "Same fish," he mutters. "I'd recognize this fish in a dream." You glance down at your own tray, a triangle of white rice, topped with a single sliver of pickled plum, a few strips of dried daikon, a piece of grilled mackerel that looks suspiciously like it's been grilled multiple times. You take a bite. It's fine, it's food, it's salt, protein, and carbohydrates. War fuel, served politely. You chew slowly, eyes drifting across the space. Everyone's quietly doing the same eating without speaking. Not because it's a ritual, but because chewing is serious business. Only the crackle of roasted seaweed and the occasional sigh of a too-hot mouth break the silence. There's something oddly comforting about how repetitive lunch is. Always rice, always something pickled. Always something with fins, dried or otherwise. Historians still argue whether samurai ate so plainly by necessity or discipline. Some say it was a spiritual choice reflecting the Zen ideals of simplicity. Others think it's because even the fancy clans couldn't stomach the cost of red meat for every meal. You personally suspect it's because dried mackerel doesn't spoil quickly, and nobody wants to die from an overly ambitious stew. You reach for your teeth this time. Thankfully, it's just roasted barley, no bitter powdered ritual involved. You sip it slowly, watching the steam rise in lazy spirals. For some reason, barley tea always smells like late summer and mistakes you're not quite ready to admit. You lift out the doomaroo, the cuirass. The lacing is slightly frayed on the right side again. You sigh and reach for the repair kit tucked in a side drawer. Threading the needle through the tough silk cord feels like trying to teach a rock how to swim. You mumble to yourself as you work. Over dash under dash through dot dot. No, wait dot dot dot. Under over O. A tiny prick of the needle bites your thumb. You suck it quickly and glare at the armor like it offended your ancestors. Historians still argue whether lower-ranked samurai repaired their own armor or had dedicated assistants. The romantic version has a loyal Kashi polishing everything while the samurai meditates on honor. Your version is decidedly more you dash sitting dash on dash the dash floor dash grumbling dash into dash your dash sleeve dot still. The act is oddly soothing in its own right. You retie the lacing slowly, checking for weak spots in the cords, chips in the lacquer. You even rewrap the lining of your suniate, the shin guards, after remembering the last time they bit into your leg during formation drills. As you polish the kabuto, your helmet, you notice a small dent along the left side, probably from that time Tadashi accidentally threw a training spear across the armory during a firewood stacking competition. You leave it. It adds character. Just as you're folding the last of the protective cloths, a page appears at your door holding a small tray. You recognize the smell before you see it. Ink and glue, new paper charms. The page bows. From the shrine, Master, for your armor. He sets down the tray with the reverence of someone placing a holy relic, then scampers off, presumably to deliver more slips of hand-brushed fortune. You pick one up, a fresh strip of paper, folded thrice, inked with neat calligraphy. Strength flows from stillness. The characters dance slightly, as though the brush had been held by someone halfway between a trance and a nap. You affix the charm to the inside of your cuirass, just above the heart lining. You're not entirely sure they work, but it feels wrong not to. Plus, if you ever fall in battle, someone will probably read it and think you were very profound. There's another charm, one with a drawing of a horse and what appears to be a grumpy-faced turtle. You blink, you read the characters. Slow endures longer than swift. You wonder if Suzu requested this one herself. You attach it anyway. Next comes the oiling. You grab the soft cloth and the little jar of clove-scented wood oil from your shelf and begin wiping down the lacquered parts of the armor. The smell takes you back to when you were a page, watching your seniors perform this same ritual, while you fidgeted nearby with itchy robes and dreams of glorious duels. You wanted to grow up fast then, now you mostly want better socks. A quirky little fact surfaces from your memory. Some samurai families, especially in the north, used sake instead of oil to shine their armor before battle. Not for the armor's benefit, but to invite the gods to notice them. Whether it worked or just made them smell like a tavern was another matter entirely. You once tried it. The armor did glisten, for a day. Then it stuck to everything. Once you've finished with the oiling and the relacing, you arrange the pieces neatly on the rack by your door. The helmet gleams faintly, catching the last light of the sun as it dips behind the temple ridge to the west. You take a step back and admire it. Not because it's impressive, it isn't, or new, definitely not, but because it's yours. Worn, repaired, reliable, like a loyal dog, or a particularly sarcastic friend. You sit cross-legged again and exhale slowly, letting your spine uncoil. Your hands are stained with oil and ink, and a little bit of blood from that earlier needle incident. You stare at your fingers and decide they look heroic in a vaguely pitiful way. A soft knock at your sliding door startles you. You open it to reveal a messenger from the main hall. He bows. The master requests your presence for the evening guard briefing. Of course. You haven't even finished your tea. You nod, wave him off politely, and wipe your hands on your sleeve before standing up. As you reach for your sword, still resting across the rack, you pause. The charms flutter slightly in the breeze. Paper whispers. Promises you don't fully believe but respect anyway. Strength flows from stillness. You murmur under your breath. You secure your blade at your side, take one last glance at the polished armor, and step outside. The light is fading. The day is shifting. But for now, your armor is clean, your charms are set, and your role, however mundane, is clear. You arrive at the main hall, just as the crickets begin their evening symphony. Tiny fiddlers with no sense of rhythm but remarkable persistence. The guard briefing is held in a side chamber. Less a formal war council and more a chance for mid-level samurai to be reminded not to fall asleep during patrols. Again. You slip off your sandals at the threshold and bow as you step inside. The room smells faintly of sandalwood, sweat, and impatience. A few of your fellow guards are already seated in neat lines on the tatami, trying to appear alert while slowly melting into their uniforms. At the front of the room stands Captain Nagaoka, who is built like a block of granite and has roughly the same flexibility. He clears his throat, then unrolls a scroll with theatrical slowness and attempts, perhaps, to create suspense for information that's already posted on the courtyard board. Tonight's rotation will begin at the northern gate. Pairings are as follows. You're assigned to the outer perimeter again. You've walked that route so many times, you're pretty sure you could do it blindfolded, backwards, and reciting last spring's poetry submissions. You nod as your name is called, resisting the urge to sigh. It's not glamorous, but it's peaceful. And that's something. As the briefing drones on, your mind wanders. Historians still argue whether night guard rotations were taken seriously. During extended peacetime, some records suggest samurai treated it like a sacred duty, while others imply it was mostly an excuse to gossip and sneak snacks. Based on your experience, the truth lies somewhere between those two extremes, with a heavy lean toward snacks. Captain Nagaka finishes with a reminder about the rice barrel incident. Check seals. Don't assume. And a note that Lord Hirotaka himself may be walking the grounds later. A collective stiffening goes through the room. Nothing makes people stand straighter than the vague possibility of noble scrutiny. After a final bow, everyone disperses. You step out into the cool dusk, your sandals pressing soft impressions into the dusty path as you make your way toward the barracks to grab your patrol lantern. The sky above is slipping into indigo, stars faintly piercing through the haze. Fireflies blink along the grass line. One floats briefly near your hand. You watch it dance, glowing gently in the dark. then flit away as if it has more important business. You pick up your patrol lantern, a wooden frame wrapped in oiled paper, with a stubby little candle inside. It's slightly singed at one corner from last week's wind incident. You tighten the clasp on your sword and step out toward the outer gate. The perimeter path stretches along the outside edge of the compound, weaving past storage sheds, gardens, and a patch of bamboo that creaks when the wind is bored. You walk slowly, the lantern casting warm, fluttering light ahead. You know this path well. The rhythm of your steps is almost meditative. Right foot, left foot, crunch of gravel, chirp of frogs. Repeat about halfway through, you spot something unusual. One of the small offering stones near the garden shrine has been knocked over. You kneel to reset it, brushing away a few stray leaves. The shrine is simple: a flat stone, a bit of rice, and a tiny folded paper crane left by a child or a monk with small hands. You smile. No grand gesture, but a quiet wish. Perhaps you leave it as you found it, maybe a little neater. Further down the path, you pass the southern watchtower. Inside, a fellow Gardaí sits cross-legged with a book in one hand and a rice cracker in the other. Anything suspicious? You ask. She raises the cracker. This tastes like wood glue. So no. Then, she chuckles. Then waves you onward. Let me know if you find anything less exciting. You continue walking, letting your mind settle into the gentle hum of nighttime sounds. Somewhere far off, a night heron croaks like a very tired trumpet. You reach the eastern edge of the perimeter, where the tall reeds grow wild, just outside the boundary wall. The wind rustles through them like soft applause. You pause for a moment, lantern swaying at your side. You're not really looking for intruders. The biggest threat tonight is probably a badger with poor impulse control. But you listen anyway. You think back to the stories they used to tell at training of ninja, creeping through the darkness, scaling walls with claws and silence, of entire compounds falling to whispers in the grass. You've never seen a ninja. You're not sure you'd want to. You suspect they're less glamorous than the stories suggest, probably covered in mud, smelling like moss, muttering curses about splinters. You keep walking. Near the far corner of the compound, you reach your favorite part of the route, the old stone bench beneath the persimmon tree. You set down the lantern and sit for a while, letting the moments stretch. The tree rustles overhead, branches heavy with unripe fruit. You remember climbing it once during a festival, back when you were still new here. You got stuck, slipped, and dropped 3 fruit on Tadashi's head. He claimed he never forgave you, but his grin said otherwise. You pick up a small fallen leaf, run your fingers along its stem, and let it drift to the ground. Tadashi leans in. So, poetry exchange next week. You groan. I'm thinking about submitting something, he adds, grinning. I've got a haiku about frogs. Let me guess, you reply. It jumps. No, it ponders, he says, dramatically. It's a philosophical frog. You shake your head and take another bite of rice, deciding not to tell him you already wrote a poem last week about a frog who regrets leaping. No need to start an amphibian rivalry. The cook makes the rounds, offering second servings of pickled burdock root. You accept out of politeness, then immediately question your life choices as the tangy bitterness hits your tongue. You nod appreciatively. It's not good, but it's what you do. At the far end of the dining space, Two higher-ranking samurai are discussing supply shipments, barrels of rice, delayed by flooding near the southern trade roads. You half listen, half daydream. The idea of moving rice from village to castle, from castle to fort, has always fascinated you, not because it's exciting, but because someone has to account for every missing grain. Somewhere, there's a person whose entire job is to say, "This barrel is 3 cups light," and mean it. One of your earliest chores as a page involved helping count the sacks in the storeroom. You fell asleep in the rice once. They made fun of you for a month. You earned the nickname Kom no Kami, God of Rice. It could have been worse. You finish your meal and stack your dishes with care. It's a small act of control in a world where most decisions are made above your head and handed down via scroll or side-eye. You carry the bowls to the washing station, where a younger retainer is elbow-deep in suds and humming a folk song about lost sandals and broken promises. You hum along. Outside, the air is still warm, but less aggressive. A mild breeze teases the edges of the compound. You stand by the door, arms folded, watching a pair of crows arguing over a rice scrap. One wins, the other sulks dramatically. You feel like that second crow most days. Tadashi joins you, licking rice off his fingers. You ever wonder if the cooks test new pickling methods on us? Like culinary guinea pigs. Exactly, you consider it. That burdock root, definitely. Tasted like an experiment. He nods, serious. I miss the ginger month. You both fall silent, contemplating the short-lived glory of ginger month. A time of subtle spice and tolerable acidity. A high point in samurai culinary history. Eventually, you excuse yourself and wander toward the back courtyard, where a few of the village children are playing with wooden swords. You pause to watch, partly out of nostalgia, partly because it's funny. One kid swings wildly and bonks himself on the forehead. He sits down, unbothered, and starts digging in the dirt instead. You admire the shift in priorities. From somewhere nearby, a rooster crows again, probably the same one that greeted your morning. You glance toward it. It's now perched atop a barrel of kindling, chest puffed out, clearly proud of itself. You briefly consider bowing to it, just to confuse a passing monk instead. You head back toward the central compound, feeling just full enough and just lazy enough that the idea of errands sounds like a punishment from a past life. But errands are next, and the clan accountant is already waving at you with that suspiciously cheerful expression that always means, "I have spreadsheets and no mercy." You sigh and wave back, already regretting everything. But before you go, you take one last moment to soak in the peaceful nothingness of post-launch air, warm, buzzing, slightly pickled. You approach the small wooden outpost near the storehouse, where the clan accountant waits with a sheaf of rice paper scrolls and the grim satisfaction of someone who enjoys arithmetic just a little too much. His name is Makoto. He wears round spectacles that slide down his nose every 3 seconds and smells faintly of ink and fermented bean paste. "Ah," he says, smiling like he's handing you a weapon that only wounds the soul. "You're just in time. I need help verifying the feed allotments for the stable." Your stomach, recently filled with pickled burdock and bland mackerel, drops a little. Of all the samurai tasks, rice counting for horses might be the least glamorous. But orders are orders. Makoto hands you a thin scroll covered in tiny brushstrokes. I suspect the mare named Suzu is eating more than her share again. We need to match inventory to consumption. You'll help weigh the feed and report inconsistencies. You blink. You want me to spy on a horse? Makoto doesn't laugh. Yes, but politely. You follow him toward the stable, passing the plum tree where sparrows are chirping like they're judging you. The stable smells like straw, hay, and exactly one too many animals trying to digest things loudly. A sleepy young stable hand hands you a wooden measure, then nods toward the grain barrels. You count, you scoop, you weigh, you record. You are now a glorified human abacus. Historians still argue whether samurai were truly involved in the logistics of war, like managing supplies, feed, or salary, or whether these tasks were delegated entirely to stewards and lower ranks. But in your case, you've definitely spent more time this month measuring oats than sharpening your blade. You walk past the horses, checking their stalls. Suzu, a gray mare with one eye and a deeply suspicious expression, stares you down as you approach. You nod at her like you're greeting a rival. She snorts. A little grain spills from the corner of her feed bucket. You measure what's left. Makoto was right, you mutter. You are sneaking seconds. She swishes her tail dramatically, like a noblewoman offended at your tone. You scribble down the number, brush hay from your sleeve, and move on. The sun has shifted again, casting long lines through the stable slats. Outside, you can hear the distant clack of bamboo poles, someone practicing two-step footwork with sticks. It sounds more exciting than math with mammals. You finish weighing the last of the barrels and find Makoto sitting cross-legged on a bench, sipping tea from a cracked bowl that's definitely seen better centuries. He squints at your figures. According to this, we're down nearly 4 measures of feed this week. And yet, no one's reported hungry horses. You raise an eyebrow. So Makoto shrugs. I suspect someone is padding the figures. You think back to the stable hand, who was chewing something suspiciously crunchy behind a bale of hay. You think he's eating horse feed. Makoto nods. Roasted barley is versatile. You want to laugh, but honestly, you've eaten worse. You return the scroll and stretch your back. The numbers are recorded. Suzu remains undefeated. The accountant is satisfied for now. He pulls out a second scroll. Your shoulders tense. Before you go, he begins theirs. The matter of the rice tax deliveries. We have 2 barrels coming in from the eastern farmstead. I need someone to inspect the contents and confirm the seal. You blink. You want me to audit rice. Makoto beams. With honor. And so you trudge out toward the eastern gate, where 2 peasants are waiting with an ox-drawn cart carrying tightly sealed barrels. One bows deeply. The other just nods. He's probably made this delivery 20 times and isn't in the mood. For formality, you crack open the first barrel. Rice, whole grains, a bit of dust. No signs of mold. You swirl your hand through the top layer like a sommelier, nodding sagely even though you have no idea what you're looking for. The second barrel's seal has a tiny chip on it. Barely noticeable. You squint, glance at the farmer, and raise an eyebrow. Transport accident, he offers quickly. A wheel caught a stone. You reply, as if weighing the consequences of a fractured dynasty. In truth, you're just debating whether it's worth the paperwork. You mark the barrel acceptable, but slightly compromised. Then wave them through. You may be a warrior by title, but today, you're the clan's official rice detective. As you walk back toward the compound, you pass the kitchen, where someone's already boiling something suspiciously You hear a loud clang followed by a yelp. Someone dropped a ladle, or got chased by the rice ball thief dog again. Both happen daily. You pass by Tadashi, who's sitting on a bench, carving a small piece of wood into something vaguely frog-shaped. "Makoto get you too?" he asks without looking up. I now know the exact grain-to-horse ratio of Suzu. Impressive. I'm thinking of submitting it as a haiku. Tadashi smirks. Just remember, no one wants to read a poem about livestock digestion. You smirk back. Wait until you hear stanza 2. You both sit quietly for a moment. Around you, the compound buzzes with ordinary motion guards, switching posts. Servants refilling, cisterns, wind rustling the long grass near the training yard. It's not a battlefield. It's not glory, but it's the rhythm of peace. And that, too, has its own strange poetry. By the time you return to your quarters, the light is beginning to tilt, no longer the aggressive blaze of high noon, but a gentler amber that brushes everything with a golden wash. You take a moment to sit, stretch your legs out in front of you, and listen to the faint tap of bamboo wind chimes swaying somewhere. In the compound, you'd almost forgotten, it's armor inspection day. The thought doesn't exactly thrill you, but it gets you moving. You walk to the cedar chest near your sleeping mat and open the heavy lid. Inside lies your personal armor, not the ceremonial parade armor that makes you look like a lacquered scarecrow, but the lighter, functional gear that's actually been worn into battle once, maybe twice. It still smells faintly of iron, dust, and effort. Somewhere to your left, a bamboo stalk creaks and shifts. Just the wind. You wait a few seconds longer. Nothing but frogs and leaves. You rise again, lifting the lantern, and begin the return loop toward the northern gate. The perimeter is secure. The night is calm, and for just a moment, in the quiet under the stars, you feel exactly where you're supposed to be by the time you complete the final stretch of your perimeter round. The compound is settling into that quiet hum, particular to late evening, the kind of silence that isn't empty but full of soft footsteps. Drowsy footsteps, footsteps that sound like the place itself is tucking itself into bed. You nod to the gate guards on your return, then pass through the garden path back toward your quarters. Your feet are sore. Your lantern is almost out. You're still thinking about that paper crane left at the shrine, who folds a prayer so neatly at that hour. You reach your room and slide the door closed behind you with a familiar chic. You extinguish your lantern, set it beside the door, and allow yourself the smallest, most luxurious of sighs. No sword drills, no scrolls, no horses. With calorie secrets, just you, and the rhythmic chirping of insects. You sit on the floor and begin the process of unstrapping your gear. First, the sword belt, then the fabric wraps at your calves. You undo the tie of your outer robe and fold it slowly, neatly. This isn't just order, it's a ritual, a winding down ceremony your body expects after the repetition of duties and the weight of armor you didn't wear but still somehow carried. You stretch, your back makes a sound like someone stepping on an old floorboard. You freeze, half laughing, half concerned. That was probably fine, just as you're about to settle down for the night. A soft knock comes at the door. You pause, Consider pretending to be asleep. But curiosity wins. You slide the door open to reveal the still hand, the same one who may or may not have been stealing roasted barley earlier. He's holding a bundle. Delivery came from the mountainside smith, he says. They asked me to bring this to you. You raise an eyebrow. A delivery. At night. He bows, sets down the bundle wrapped in rice paper and bound with a single twine knot, and disappears into the darkness like a plot twist. You close the door and open the bundle. Inside, a blade. Not a sword. A knife. Small, narrow, and newly forged. Its handle is wrapped in fresh cord, and the metal still smells like it remembers the forge. There's a slip of parchment tucked in the wrapping, for carving or cutting, fruit, or cutting silence when needed. You recognize the handwriting. The old smith on the hill, he told you once that a warrior needed 3 blades, one to fight, one to prepare, and one to make peace with boredom. This one, definitely the third kind. You test the edge on your thumb carefully, this time, sharp. Enough to split hairs. You retrieve the half-carved block of wood Tadashi gave you earlier, and sit cross-legged, whittling. Not for battle. Not for art. Just for the feel of motion. Shavings fall around your knees. The figure is abstract, maybe a toad, maybe a turtle, maybe something that wouldn't survive in nature without intervention. But it takes shape all the same. Historians still argue whether samurai engaged in idle hobbies like carving or painting. Some documents suggest it was seen as cultivating stillness. Others argue such activities were considered frivolous unless tied to spiritual practice or duty. You suspect the truth is simpler. People get bored, even warriors especially. Warriors. You keep carving until the candle gutters, then place the new knife on a folded cloth beside your bed. The figure, whatever it is, sits beside it like a lumpy guardian spirit. You lie down on the mat. The sounds outside have softened. A faint breeze creeps through the open corner of the window. You pull your blanket up to your chin and think, not for the first time, that the hardest part of the day is convincing your legs to stop humming from hours of kneeling. As you shift on the mat, something crunches under your shoulder. You sit up and find a crumpled scrap of parchment. Todashi's frog poem draft. It reads, "A frog sits alone. Is it thinking about war? No. Just a sandwich." You stifle a laugh. That's peak Tadashi. You fold it neatly and tuck it into your sleeve. It might make a good trade at the poetry exchange. The candle flickers once more, then dies with a whisper, and there you are wrapped in the dark. Not the kind of darkness that looms, but the kind that holds you like water. You feel your breath slow. Your limbs finally surrender their tension. The wooden frog figure watches over you like a lopsided sentry. In this moment, there is no battle to prepare for, no scroll to read, no stable animal plotting to disrupt the feed economy, just quiet, and that's enough. Morning again, but not the crisp, disciplined morning that starts with shouting and bamboo swords. No, this one is slower. The kind that arrives like an old friend nudging your shoulder rather than a commander yanking off your blanket. The sun is just now peeling itself over the trees, painting the compound in that gentle gold that makes even the dusty roofs look romantic. You stretch slowly, carefully, your limbs protest, but only out of habit. There's no training on the schedule this morning, no patrol, no scroll delivery. For the first time in what feels like weeks, You have a few hours with no assignment, which, for a samurai, is a rare and dangerous thing. Free time invites all sorts of existential questions like, what if I cleaned my room? Or worse, should I write another haiku? You sit up, yawn, and spot the little wood carving from last night, still lumpy, still frog-shaped in the most generous sense, but it makes you smile. You pick it up and carry it with you as you step outside. The courtyard is empty, save for one old monk sweeping leaves that don't really need sweeping. He nods as you pass. You nod back with the solemnity of two people who agree that pretending to be busy is an art form. You head toward the back gardens, where the medicinal herbs grow in chaotic little patches. Mint is overtaking the time. The shiso has declared independence. You crouch beside a stone bench and sniff a sprig of something spicy, unsure if it's edible or a prank planted by the cook. This is where the healer often works, and sure enough, she's already there kneeling beside a patch of burdock, muttering to herself and sorting leaves by size like they owe her money. Ah, she says, without looking up. You again. Try not to faint in my direction today. You blink. I've never fainted. You almost fainted, twice. You decide not to argue. She hands you a basket without explanation. You know the drill. Help her harvest before she lectures you on spleens. You work side by side, plucking stalks of mugwort and trimming dried lavender, placing each carefully in the basket. The air smells like rain hasn't come yet, but might consider it. A hawk circles overhead. Somewhere near the wall, the rice ball thief dog is probably napping on someone's clean robe. After a few minutes, she speaks again. You still have that limp in your left knee. I do not, you lie, while discreetly stretching your leg behind you. She squints at you, the way a falcon squints at a mouse pretending to be a rock. Too much Seza, you need better padding. Seza is tradition. So is back pain, she replies, tying a bundle of herbs with twine like she's restraining a troublesome thought. You like her. She's blunt. And she doesn't ask you to recite things. Once the basket is full, she stands and hands you a small cloth pouch. For your joints, she says. Steep it in hot water. Don't drink it unless you like tasting despair. You nod gratefully and tuck it into your sleeve. Your joints whisper their appreciation. Historians still argue whether samurai actually engaged with herbal medicine beyond battlefield wounds. Some believe it was a strictly monk-related practice, while others argue warriors learned the basics to survive long campaigns without doctors. You're living proof that knowing which leaf to chew makes you braver than a sword ever could. You thank her and head off again, walking the inner path that curves near the small koi pond. You pause there, watching the lazy swirls beneath the surface. One of the koi has a scar across its side. You've seen it before, months ago. Someone said a hawk tried to snatch it once. Now it swims slower, but never hides. You like that fish. You sit at the edge, pull out the frog carving, and dip its wooden toes into the water like it, too, is contemplating existence. A shadow passes. Behind you, Tadashi, of course. He sits down next to you, offering half a rice cracker as a peace offering. I heard, he says. Heard what? That you're not limping, very convincingly. You take the cracker, eat it, and say nothing. It tastes like sawdust and respect. He eyes your carving. Is that a frog? Obviously. Ah, I see the shape of it. You shove him lightly, and he shoves you back. It's tradition, like Caesar, or unnecessary herbal teas. You both watch the pond in silence. After a moment, Tadashi pulls a scroll from his sleeve and hands it to you. What's this? My final frog poem. I'm submitting it at the exchange. You unroll it. It reads, "A frog leaps again, not for war nor for wisdom, just bored of sitting." You glance sideways at him. This is good. I know, he says, smug. I wrote it while pretending to count arrows. You roll it back up and hand it back. It's better than the sandwich one. I still stand by that. One. You lean back on your hands, letting the morning slip by like koi in lazy loops. The sun has risen higher now, but not yet hot. A perfect window of calm. You don't know what this afternoon will bring. Maybe drills, maybe scrolls, maybe a surprise. Tea ceremony with wild ginger and passive-aggressive poetry. But right now, you sit beside your friend, beside the pond, with the air full of frogs, leaves, and unspoken jokes. It's peace. Not the kind that makes history, but the kind that makes sense. By midday, the calm has given way to motion again, not the frenzied activity of preparation for battle or the choreographed pacing of martial drills, but the softer hum of human maintenance. You find yourself assigned to one of the least glorious but somehow most revealing samurai tasks, overseeing laundry duty. No one ever mentions laundry in the epic war scrolls. No noble poet has ever, to your knowledge, composed a verse about the aroma of boiling linen or the strategic folding of leggings. And yet, here you are, standing ankle-deep in warm water, scrubbing someone else's battle-smudged juban, under the close and unforgiving eye of a senior attendant named Kyo, whose folding technique could deflect arrows. Gentler, she says, not looking up from her own pile. You're not attacking it. You're persuading it. You nod solemnly. Yes, persuasive scrubbing. She narrows her eyes at you, but says nothing. You're learning. The laundry courtyard is open air, surrounded by low walls and bamboo screens that sway gently in the wind. Wooden buckets sit in rows, half filled with herbal soapsuds and wrinkled garments. A fire boils one large pot of water, constantly fed by a boy whose entire job appears to be chopping wood and looking underwhelmed. You scrub a sleeve with new focus, imagining it as your chance to perfect the art of softness through strength. That, or remove the mystery stain Tadashi insists was ink. You're not convinced. Historians still argue whether warriors themselves ever participated in laundering their own clothing. Some accounts suggest armor-bearers and household servants handled the bulk of such work. Others say samurai, especially during travel or siege, did whatever was necessary, including scrubbing their own socks, which is a far more intimate kind of combat than any sword fight. You glance over to see Tadashi several buckets away, having just dunked an entire robe directly into a vat of soap. Kyo shoots him a glare so potent it could wilt blossoms. He shrinks 2 inches and mutters something about creative technique. You smile into your washcloth. After the scrubbing comes the wringing, an act that seems simple until your arms begin to ache like you've just sparred with a tree trunk. The fabric resists. The soap clings. Your back twinges in protest. You soldier on. Eventually the clothes are clean enough to hang. You carry the dripping bundles to the line and begin clipping them with wooden pins, spacing them evenly like ceremonial flags. Each gust of wind sends the garments dancing, sleeves waving like tiny white ghosts practicing Tai Chi. You find it oddly poetic. Or maybe the soap fumes are getting to you. With the main washing done, you take a break under the plum tree just outside the courtyard. Someone's left a bowl of barley tea on the stone bench. You look around, no one claims it. You drink it. That's just how it works here. Tadashi flops down beside you, damp robe tied messily around his waist. I think I may have permanently injured a towel. I think the towel will recover, but not your pride. He smirks. At least we're not on muck duty. You both pause, thinking of the latrine crew currently digging out the drainage trenches behind the outer barracks. There are some chores so dreadful that even scrubbing undergarments becomes noble by comparison. You sip your tea, letting the wind dry your sleeves. The sun is high now, casting sharp shadows. Somewhere nearby, a sparrow dives into the laundry. Lines, then escapes carrying what looks suspiciously like a thread from someone's underrobe. Nature's little thief. You remember hearing once that some samurai kept pet sparrows or crows as companions during lonely deployments. Historians still debate whether these were symbols, messengers, or just strange attempts at having friends who couldn't talk back. You wouldn't mind a sparrow, except for the laundry theft. KIYO calls you both back. Folding time. You rise, joints groaning slightly, and re-enter the square, where the dry clothes now hang crisp and warm from the sun. Kyo demonstrates the method. Fold inward, then back, then in again. Then roll, then press flat like you're squashing a minor rebellion. You try, fail, try again, get a small nod, achievement unlocked by the time everything's stacked into neat little cloth pyramids. Your shoulders ache, but your mind feels unusually calm. There's something satisfying about making chaos orderly even if it's just socks. Kyo hands you a final bundle. Deliver this to the Eastern Barracks, she says, and don't drop it. I know how you walk. You take the pile like it's sacred and head off, cradling it in both arms. As you pass through the training yard, you spot a new recruit, practicing footwork with exaggerated, swooping moves. It's clearly too dramatic, but they look so focused you can't help but root for them. You nod as you pass. They trip on their own stance, fall, and bow to the ground with theatrical humility. You offer no comment. That's the spirit. You deliver the bundle to the Eastern Barracks, where it's received with enthusiasm by two very tired-looking guards who thank you like you're bearing treasure. Clean robes, after all, are one of the small comforts that feel enormous after long days in dust and armor. Back outside, the air is thicker, the scent of the coming evening slowly winding its way into the breeze. Smoke from the cook fires, hints of ginger, soy, and steamed greens. Someone's boiling broth. Your stomach issues a hopeful growl. Laundry duty is over. You're clean, your hands are wrinkled, and you've gained an appreciation for cloth that holds together even after 10 washes. Not every warrior's skill set involves a sword. Some just know how to fold better than fate. You make your way back. Across the compound, the sun warm at your back, your step a little lighter, and a folded towel still slung over your shoulder like a tiny victory flag. The sun dips lower, staining the sky with that warm, dusty orange that makes the rooftops glow like old bronze. You walk slowly now, no particular urgency in your steps, just letting the quiet seep into your bones. It's not quite evening, but the day has released its grip. Things are softening. You pass through the inner corridor and find yourself drawn, as you often are, to the calligraphy hall. It's quiet, like it always is this time of day, when even the ink seems to breathe slower. You slide the door open gently. Inside, long scrolls of half-dried poetry hang from wooden rods, fluttering just slightly in the breeze from the open window. The scent of ink, rice paper, and cedar fills your lungs. You bow out of habitaven to the empty room and step inside. This hall is technically reserved for artistic study and correspondence, which, in theory, should mean you're writing letters of state or philosophical reflections. In practice, it's a sanctuary for every samurai secretly terrified of forgetting how to spell the word for wind. At the low desk near the back, you find a few supplies already laid out: a brush, a small inkstone, and a water pot with a carved frog sitting at its rim. You take it as a sign. You pour water into the stone's hollow, begin grinding the ink slowly with the inkstone. It makes that soft whispering sound, like wind slipping across paper. You focus on the motion round and round, letting your thoughts settle. Historians still argue whether calligraphy was truly revered among the warrior class, or merely a status display. Some samurai, like Miyamoto Musashi, were known for both swordsmanship and exquisite brushwork. Others probably used the brush more like a spear. But for you, the act is less about aesthetics and more about rhythm. You dip the brush, hold it poised above the paper, and begin with a simple kanji mu, emptiness. The character blooms in bold, wet strokes, then another, Suki moon, then Asa. Morning. The brush flows freely, sometimes gracefully, sometimes like a nervous goose. You're not here to impress. You're here to pour out the leftover bits of your day, halfway through a new character. Something resembling persimmon but possibly accidental squirrel. You hear the door slide open behind you. It's Tadashi. Of course he holds up a scroll triumphantly. Poetry exchanges been moved to tonight. You blink. That's not enough notice. Exactly. Now no one will have time to revise. Chaos favors mediocrity. It's my hour. You smirk and gesture for him to join you. He flops beside you, dropping his scroll ink and exactly one rice cracker, which he dusts off and eats anyway. He glances at your work. Is that the kanji for bamboo fog, or are you mad at trees? Interpretive respect, together. You write in silence for a while. Occasionally, one of you mutters a syllable or hums a line. There's something comforting about the way your brushes move out of sync like two rivers running parallel but separately. Never in competition. You try composing a haiku. Ink soaks through the page. Even the frogs grow silent. Sun forgets to shine. You frown. It's moody. Might be too much. You slide it aside like it didn't happen. Tadashi, meanwhile, is sketching something that looks suspiciously like Suzu, the mare, in a headband. You raise an eyebrow. She's my muse, he says, with complete sincerity. Eventually, the candle in the corner sputters and coughs, a little puff of smoke its way of announcing the hour. The light outside is cooler now, more lavender than gold. A quiet knock at the hall's side door interrupts your calm. It's the steward of the main house, holding a folded scroll. For you, he says, bowing slightly. From Lord Hirotaka. Both freeze. Even Tadashi stops mid-Suzu sketch. You accept it, and wait until the steward vanishes to open it. Inside, a short note, neatly written. Your attendance is requested at the poetry exchange tonight. No pressure, but I do hope you bring your best. Signed with Lord Hirotaka's personal seal. You stare at the scroll for a moment, blinking. Tadashi leans over your shoulder and reads it upside down. Well, he says, either he's challenging you, or he's flirting. Possibly both. You groan. Now I actually have to try. Tadashi grins. Welcome to the battlefield of metaphor. You pack up your calligraphy tools and tuck a few scrolls under your arm, including your most ambiguous haiku, and a backup about laundry that frankly deserves more attention than it'll get. As you and Tadashi leave the hall, the compound around you glows in twilight. Figures in robes begin gathering near the plum garden for the exchange, voices soft, laughter polite. Even Lord Hirotaka is there sipping tea, nodding graciously, and wearing a robe so fine it might have cost as much as a new horse. You feel a flutter in your chest. Not nerves, just the strange, prickly excitement of being seen. You're a samurai, you can wield a blade, but now you'll face the deadliest weapon of all, the critical gaze of poets. You step onto the gravel path that leads toward the plum garden, scrolls tucked beneath your arm, and that polite little voice in the back of your mind whispering things like, "Don't trip," and "Why did you write 3 poems about frogs again?" The lanterns strung through the trees glow softly, paper shades casting halos across the stone walkways and low shrubs. It's not grand, exactly, but elegant in the quiet way that noble gatherings often are. A servant bows as you enter and offers you a ceramic cup filled with something faintly herbal. You sip. It's pleasant ginger, plum, a hint of mint. But it's also a trap. This is exactly the kind of beverage that loosens the tongue and inspires you to recite that one haiku you definitely weren't going to share. You glance around. A semicircle of cushions has been laid out under the trees. Lord Hirotaka sits near the center, his robe deep indigo with the faint outline of a crane stitched in thread so fine it glints only when he turns. His hair is swept into a knot so perfect it likely defies geometry. He catches your eye, nods once. You bow deeply and take your seat. Tadashi slides in beside you, radiating exactly the kind of chaotic glee you'd expect from someone who has absolutely written a poem mocking the household's rooster. He leans in and whispers, "I'm going. First, no one expects dignity from me, so I can only surprise or disappoint." You whisper back. He grins. Exactly. The poetry exchange begins with the senior steward reciting a traditional verse about autumn winds. It's appropriately wistful, full of falling leaves and invisible longing, a safe choice. Then Tadashi clears his throat. My poem, he says solemnly, is titled Meditation at Dawn. He unfolds a scroll with all the ceremony of a sacred relic and reads, A rooster howls thrice. I rise with the breath of sun. Trip on my own foot. A few restrained snorts emerge from the gathering. Even Lord Hirotaka smiles barely, but it counts. Tadashi bows with exaggerated dignity and sits. You glance down at your own scroll, still unsure which one to read. You have 3 options. A haiku about the frog figurine, one about the koi with the scar, and one about laundry. The third feels dangerously honest. Lord Hirotaka gestures toward you. Would you honor us with a verse? No pressure, just the landlord casually asking for your inner thoughts disguised as metaphors. You rise, bow low, and unfold the coy scroll. This poem, you say, is untitled. You read a koi bears its scar, not with pride but memory. Water does not ask, there's a pause. The good kind, the kind where even the sparrows go quiet for a beat. Then, a single clap, Lord Hirotaka's, followed by a gentle wave of applause from the rest. Tadashi pats your shoulder with the same hand he later uses to sneak 2 extra rice cakes from the refreshment tray. You return to your seat, breath easing out slowly. That poem had been circling your head for days, but saying it aloud, that was something else entirely. The exchange continues, each participant offering verses. Some are elegant, some humorous. One about misplacing a sandal gets a bigger laugh than expected. You listen, sip your tea, and feel yourself sinking deeper into the quiet comfort of the gathering. Historians still debate whether poetry nights like these were regular traditions among mid-ranking samurai. Some argue they were reserved for aristocrats and scholar warriors. But many record some smuggled in between pages of war diaries suggest that even those who lived by the sword longed for the intimacy of ink by the time the lanterns begin to dim, and the fireflies start their silent dance through the trees. Lord Hirotaka stands and offers a closing thought. A warrior who cannot observe beauty is a blade without balance, he says, voice gentle but clear. May your pens be as sharp as your swords. You and Tadashi rise, bow, and begin the slow stroll back through the garden. He stretches. Well, that went better than expected. You didn't fall over, you say. The crowd missed an opportunity. Your koi poem, he adds, suddenly serious. Was that about you? You shrugged. I don't know, maybe. It's about swimming anyway. He nods. That's enough meaning for one night. As you near your quarters, the compound has quieted to a hush. No clanging, no footsteps, just the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of a night bird. The moon, now high, spills silver light across the rooftops. You reach your door and pause. Todashi, already a few paces away, calls back, "You coming to breakfast drills tomorrow?" Depends. Is it spear formations, or the how many ways can we fold a robe? Competition, he grins, surprise. You smile and step into your room. It's still familiar, and slightly cooler now that the air has shifted. You change out of your formal robe, fold it carefully, and place it next to your earlier carving. The little frog sits watching, unmoved. You reach for a clean scroll and jot down a final line before bed. A frog sits in still. Everything moves around him, but he just listens. Maybe it's not brilliant, but it feels right. You extinguish the candle, lie down, and let the soft glow of the moon be your final lantern for the night. The night deepens, folding around the compound like a soft blanket woven from shadows and the faintest scent of plum blossoms. You lie on your mat, the cool wood beneath steady and grounding, while the moonlight filters in through the open window, casting long silver stripes across your folded robe and the wooden frog carving resting on the floor beside your bed. Your breathing slows, syncing with the quiet rhythm of the night. Outside, the world hums softly, a gentle chorus of crickets. The occasional rustle of bamboo leaves, and distant, muted voices from late-night conversations that seem both close and impossibly far away. There is no urgency here, no call to arms. Just the peacefulness that follows a day spent between duty and small moments of grace. You think back on everything. The steady routines, the quiet victories of mundane tasks, the laughter shared with Tadashi, and the unexpected warmth of the poetry exchange. It's strange, in a way, how the life of a samurai between battles can be so filled with these delicate threads of human experience. Not the clashing of swords or the flash of armor, but the simple acts that stitch the days together. Your eyes grow heavy as you reflect on the carved frog's imperfect form, the scraped knee that still aches a bit, and the whispered prayers left at the shrine. There is strength here, to the kind that doesn't roar but endures, like the ancient trees standing watch over the compound. Historians still debate whether the daily life of samurai was more about ritual and discipline or about carving out moments of humanity amid the demands of honor. Perhaps it was both, intertwined like the brushstrokes of a calligraphy scroll. Now, as you lie in the soft embrace of the night, you feel a quiet gratitude for this stillness, this pause, for the space between battles where the world slows, just enough for you to catch your breath, to listen, and to simply be. You close your eyes, the moonlight fading to a gentle glow in your mind's eye. The sound of the night carries you away not with the clang of steel, but with the whisper of leaves and the hush of a world at rest. Sweet dreams, you tell yourself. Tomorrow, the routine will begin again, but for now, you are home. End of script. Sweet dreams.